Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, here at the Gaggle, we like to have a good laugh now and then. There's not much to laugh at, but there's, so much like, with Tucker Carlson, he would have his light detours, when he'd bring up the subject of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez
well, Harris.
Exactly, or the guy with what was it, the California congressman, who rode on a camel and the bear shirt.
Oh, and he has Chinese girlfriend named
Chinese girlfriend, the Chinese spy girlfriend. Yes.
So I really liked it to say, what was her name? Yum Yum.
Yum Yum.
That was on in Congress. It was a real slur, but it was hilarious. Okay. I always forget his name. Is it Stallwell or Stall?
Yeah, Swalwell. That's right, Eric Swalwell.
Well, I always say Stall because he stalled.
This Stall, Eric Swalwell. Yeah, that's right. So here, but we do the same thing here at the Gaggle. So one of our favorites is Josep Borrell, the EU foreign minister, who always can be relied on to make some idiotic pronouncement that we can devour. But now another person was added to the firmament, and that is NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. He likes to talk, he likes to give press conference, and he likes to give interviews, and you can always rely on him for imbecilities and violations of logic, common sense, reason. So he gave an interview the other day to the Washington Post editorial board, and I want to show our viewers some highlights from this Stoltenberg interview. And so here we have this is in the opinion. What is the future of the war in Ukraine? NATO's leader offers insight. Insight. And so this is the Lee Hochstatter. Says, how has the war led NATO to recalibrate its defense posture and doctrine? Defense posture. So, it's always good to, have leading questions. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. The war in Ukraine has fundamentally changed NATO, but then you have to remember the war didn't start in 2022. The war started in 2014. And since then, NATO has implemented the biggest reinforcement of our collective defense since the end of the Cold War. Whoops. So
he's been watching the Gaggle.
So
it wasn't unprovoked.
It wasn't unprovoked. You said, oh, it's unprovoked. It's unprovoked. I said, yeah. So it started in 2014. Since then, NATO has implemented the biggest reinforcement of our collective defense in Ukraine, which isn't part of NATO. So how can it be a collective defense if you're involved in Ukraine, which isn't part of NATO? And then
I'm sure the journalist Lee is going to interrogate that.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And so it goes, for the first time in our history, we have combat-ready troops in the eastern part of the alliance, the battle groups in Poland, Lithuania, Baltic countries, actually the whole 8 battle groups from the Baltic Sea down to the Black Sea. Whoa, isn't that a violation of the NATO-Russia, the friendship treaty? Isn't that what the whole point was, that you weren't going to base permanently any armed forces and equipment and everything there in those territories? So there it is. So he's already, at the start of the interview, he's already given away stuff, just like Borrell always sort of blurts things out. So higher readiness of our forces and increased defense spending. Until 2014, NATO allies were reducing defense budgets, and then since 2014, all allies across Europe and Canada have increased their defense spending. Always defense.
George, what happened in 2014? Why 2014? Does he mention it?
No, exactly. 2014. Exactly.
No.
Yeah. Right. That's right. So what happened in 2014? How did that in any way threaten anyone at all in NATO? Canada? How was Canada threatened by anything that happened in 2014? So Hochstatter then says, what does a plausible way forward to Ukraine's eventual membership in NATO look like? Well, first of all NATO allies agree that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance. Now, he said this before, and when he said that, I think Orban kind of put a little tweet and just says, "What?" That's how they just put a question of what? All NATO allies agree Ukraine will become a member of the alliance. So in other words, guaranteed to be in a war with Russia. Oh, that's a good idea. All NATO allies are in agreement with that.
What is Mr. Erdogan? I wonder what his position is.
Exactly, yeah, that Ukraine will become a member. All allies agree that Ukraine has the right to choose its own path, that it is not for Moscow but for Kiev to decide. When did everyone say that? That somehow it's decided upon by Ukraine? I mean, no, it's supposed to be unanimous decision by all NATO members to invite someone to join NATO. It's not up to Ukraine or anyone to decide that hey, I want to be part of this.
George, I think you need to email or maybe direct message on Twitter to Stoltenberg the first article of the NATO treaty. Okay?
Yes, that's right.
And maybe he should have read the entire treaty before he did this ridiculous interview.
Right. And it says, and thirdly, all allies agree that NATO's door remains open. That is the question is when, and I cannot give you a timetable on that. And then he says, well, Hochstadter, this is tough interviewing. We've seen no real moves towards nuclear deployment by Russian President Vladimir Putin. In fact, China has warned against that, which should carry some weight in Moscow. When did that happen? I mean, China said we don't want nuclear war because nuclear war is not a great idea, and that was supposed to be a warning to Moscow. I mean, again, this is the Washington Post thing. Should the world still regard these nuclear threats as credible?
We went from no real moves towards nuclear deployment to threats.
Yes.
There's only one sentence in between, George. How did that happen?
That's right. Stoltenberg, NATO has fundamentally two tasks in this war. One is to support...
I thought NATO wasn't in this war.
But this is a classic. Just one is to support Ukraine, as we do. The other is to prevent escalation. And we prevent escalation by making absolutely clear that we are not party to the conflict. Whoa. One is to support Ukraine, as we do. The other is to prevent escalation, and we prevent escalation by making absolutely clear we are not a party to the conflict, and by increasing military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, as we have done, with 40,000 troops under NATO command, backed by substantial naval and air forces. Can you make head or tail of any of this? I mean, this is just gibberish. I mean, so we want to prevent escalation. So we are not a party to the conflict, and we're increasing our military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and we're supporting Ukraine, but we're not a part of the party to the conflict, and that's how we prevent escalation. We put, this makes absolutely no sense. I mean, this defies any reasoning, common sense, or anything.
Well, and of course, there's no pushback against it.
Yeah,
I mean, has fundamentally two tasks in the war. The rest of it is canceled because you say you're not in the war. You're not a co-belligerent, right. Okay? And again, speechless how idiotic someone could possibly be, and right. Someone in authority.
Yes. So we prevent escalation by increasing our military presence. I mean,
we prevent escalation by escalating.
We prevent escalation by escalating. But this is their reason. Like, you remember Annalena Baerbock, I'm working day and night to bring peace to Ukraine. That's why I want to send as many tanks as possible to Ukraine, because I'm working to bring peace. Hochstadter, this is a tough speaking, journalist. I mean, this is, in the Discord leaks, we saw that American intelligence assesses a small likelihood of major territorial changes arising from the coming Ukrainian offensive. Do you share that assessment? And says, well, I don't want to confirm the information in those leaks, and we know at least some of them are manipulated and not correct. So the ones that we don't like, they're manipulated and correct. The ones we do like, they're accurate. But okay. The second, the Ukrainians have proven that they are able to retake territory Thirdly, since the winter when these alleged leaks took place, there has been an enormous and unprecedented supply of new weapons and ammunition and spare parts and training. So NATO allies and partners have trained this winter more than 9 brigades, which are now fully equipped, fully manned, and well-trained. And that's a significant firepower, including 230 battle tanks, heavy armor, and a lot of modern weapons systems. But NATO is not a party to the conflict.
And NATO wants peace. Okay.
And NATO wants peace. This is how we bring peace. I mean, this utter nonsense. We're doing this, and exactly NATO wants peace. And then Hochstadter says, is it plausible that China could play a diplomatic role in negotiating an end to the war? So far, they've not been able to condemn the illegal invasion of Ukraine, but I welcome the conversation between Zelensky and Xi Jinping. Why should they condemn anything? I mean, you know, they don't see this as the way you see it. So I mean,
well, and the Chinese have also said that, agreeing with Stoltenberg, that this goes all the way back to 2014. Okay,
right, exactly. It says what happens in Europe matters for Asia, and what happens in Asia matters for Europe. This is like, you know, this is Hillary Clinton. Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights. So this is, you know, what happens in Europe matters for Asia, and what happens in Asia matters for Europe. Because if President Putin wins,
I'm sorry, particularly when it's decided in Washington.
Particularly when it's yeah, it's all decided in Washington. Yes, because if President Putin wins in Ukraine, it's a tragedy for the Ukrainian, but it's dangerous for all of us. Ooh. You know, it's dangerous.
But I thought you weren't part of the conflict, so how is it dangerous?
Yes, that's right. Because that will send a message to President Putin, but also to President Xi, that when they use military force, they will get what they want, and that will make us more vulnerable.
Yeah, but you use military forces to get what you wanted for 8 years.
Yeah, exactly. You've been using that, and then of course even before that. I mean, what were you doing in 2011 in Libya? I mean, you just simply went ahead and bombed Libya. What was that about? And then, you know, going about Yugoslavia, you know, you just, you know, you use force all the time. I mean, what the hell is NATO? You know, it's not. It really isn't a supper club.
And the Afghanistan taper was a NATO-sponsored conflict.
That's right, exactly. And then, so Hochstein says, well, obviously, NATO is about the North Atlantic, not the Pacific. And yet in a war over Taiwan, American military bases in the Pacific could easily be targets. Can you imagine any scenario in which NATO is involved in a conflict with China? Well, there are American military bases in the Pacific, and they could easily be targets. Well, why are there American military bases in the Pacific? And why exactly? I mean, is Taiwan a part of the United States? Is it a part of NATO? I mean, in other words, you know, well, hey, they could become targets. Yeah, they might become targets if you want to pick a fight with China. They could become targets.
And why are bases there? Yeah. Oh, I guess the target is China.
yeah. Stoltenberg says yes. I'm not sure what the yes is to. Yes to what? Yes, NATO will remain an alliance of North America and Europe. It will not become a global alliance with members from Asia, and our collective security guarantee applies for NATO territory. Oh, good. Second, any conflict in and around Taiwan will have profound consequences for all of us. So he says one thing, then immediately, you know, he's gonna say the opposite. Any conflict in and around Taiwan will have profound consequences for all of us. Trade, 50% of container freight ships go through the Taiwan Strait. Significant amount of all of the world's semiconductors are produced in Taiwan. So the economic and trade consequences of conflict in Taiwan will be enormous immediately. And then, of course, military conflict will also matter for NATO and NATO allies. So NATO is in or out? I mean, you know, what's the answer to the question? I mean, he just babbles on with, you know.
But why don't we just NATO, a military alliance? I don't think it has any role in any of this, but member states of NATO in Europe should support a peaceful resolution to the issue, the intra-Asia, intra-China issue of China and Taiwan. And you know, buzz off. It's none of your business.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. But apparently, it's a NATO interest to exacerbate the conflict between China and Taiwan.
it's all everything. See, this is, you always hear, like Lincoln, we don't believe it's a 19th century concept of spheres of influence. Okay, no, for people like Blinken, the whole world is America's sphere of influence, and Stoltenberg echoes that.
That's
okay,
right. That's
no,
exactly
we're
right.
North America and Europe, but it is in our interests. Okay,
That's right. That's right. Yeah, anywhere it goes, like with any kind of business or trade. Oh, that we have a vital interest here. So we can get involved with our forces and so on. So that's Stoltenberg gave this interview, and it's a kind of an amazing thing is that if you ever read the transcripts of all of these his press conferences, no one ever challenges him on anything. I think once there was some Russian journalist who asked him some question about NATO and Yugoslavia. Stoltenberg completely muffed the question because he's so unused to anyone asking him an awkward question.
No, but Yugoslavia was a triumph, a victory for NATO.
Exactly.
It shows what NATO can do. I mean,
right.
Just, what?
Yes, that's right. Exactly, because he then chimed in. Well, of course, that was authorized by the UN Security Council, and then a reporter had to say, well, actually, as far as I recall, there wasn't a UN Security Council authorizing it. Well, yeah, but that was but you could tell Stoltenberg has absolutely no idea. Just like he doesn't know what the North Atlantic Treaty says, so he had no idea about the UN Security Council.
That's why he's there, George. That's why he's there.
Right.
He doesn't think about anything.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Perfect.
These platitudes, just these platitudes, and then you have a Washington Post reporter like a seal clapping. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
George is right. There was that one question on Yugoslavia, but other than that, I have never seen him challenge.
Right, and that was asked by a Russian reporter.
Never in a room challenge.
Yeah, that's right. No one ever does. No, they always, these fawning, obsequious journalists, who's one question basically is, why aren't we doing more for Ukraine? Why aren't we doing more to thwart Putin? That's really their only question, so that's what they regard as a tough question. Well, are we really, I mean, why aren't NATO member states spending more on their defense? Well, that's a problem, but we're going in the right direction. So that's
how about a question like this? Well, considering NATO's involvement in the destruction of the state of Yugoslavia, its destruction of Libya, its botched time in Afghanistan. So the Russians have nothing to worry about, right? Okay, yes. You're not threatening them.
Yes.
I mean, how about a question like that? That's all historically based.
Right, exactly. Or even just simply say, you've been in, you admit you were there since 2014. How can you go on saying that it's unprovoked? Would the United States regard Russian or Chinese involvement in Mexico for 8 years? And then they decide finally to act that this was unprovoked. And then was said, how can this be unprovoked? And yeah, we've been there since 2014. And
but we're not part of the conflict.
We're not part of the conflict. We're just standing around.
The funny thing is that when you interview Stoltenberg, you get a 2-for-1. You're talking to two people,
right? But we're not party to the conflict. It's a little like that. Remember the when the Russians kind of down that. I remember the what was it? It was the surveillance. Was it a surveillance drone? Over the Black Sea.
Oh, when American jets pissed on exactly. Russian jets pissed on their drone.
Pissed on the surveillance drone. It's in international waters. Yeah, it just happens to be a few miles away from Crimea. It's a surveillance drone collecting intelligence that is going to pass on to Ukraine. It's just minding its own business, not doing any harm to anyone. Just enjoying the scenery.
Go ahead. You'll see what happens the next time. Okay, go ahead.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but under international war.
Yeah.
You're not welcomed here. There's a military conflict going on,
and
which you're involved in.
That's right. Yeah. I think the other day, I think the Russians intercepted some Polish planes over the Black Sea. And then the immediate question: why are there Polish planes in the Black Sea? I mean, as far as I remember, Poland's not a Black Sea power, but so,
Well, but Poland has had Black Sea ambitions in the
it's had
past.
Black Sea ambitions, but hey, we're just minding our own business, enjoying the view. No harm being done.
Just out for a Sunday drive.
Beautiful day, lovely weather, Black Sea, beautiful place. We're just,
Just we packed a lunch, coffee in the thermos.
That's right. Oh, look at that. The people are on the beach. It's like, this is really, really nice. So again, so you're there. You're right. You're close to Crimea. We're not a party to the conflict. No, just doing, our thing. But that, this is, Stoltenberg. We always have a good laugh about it. And, it just shows this sort of absolute imbecility of the kind of the Western leadership and the imbecility of this organization, this military organization that will lead to disaster. As long as it continues, it is going to lead to disaster.
And he's doing his job impeccably, George.
Right.
He's doing it very well. Okay, he is a cutaway. He's a stand-in for an organization that is inherently aggressive and at the whim and call of these people in Washington. Okay. Right. What happened to self-respect in Europe? I don't know, George.
Yeah,
they left like an Englishman, didn't they?
That's right, exactly. And we've all forgotten. Remember Macron made those few sensible comments when he was in China. That's all been forgotten. That's like ancient history. Just like when he said NATO's brain dead. Just says this and then just carries on in his merry way. With NATO and everything else. So it just doesn't matter. Until in the 2 years' time, Macron would say again, something sensible in an interview, and then that too will just be quietly forgotten.
Because it doesn't matter what any of these people say, okay? I mean, Stoltenberg can sing Mary Poppins, and it doesn't mean anything. Right. It's just vacuous. What he's doing is doing his little fundraising tour, his consciousness raising tour. That's all it is, okay? Yeah. And George is right. This is all going to end very, very badly, okay? Yeah. And we keep telling everyone, anyone that will listen, this is going to end badly. Yeah. And not because I wanted to, but this is an inevitability based on the trajectory of this mindset.
That's right. It's because it's an aggressive alliance. It's an aggressive expansionist alliance that is the raison d'etre is to go on expanding to
Beijing.
That's right, to Beijing. It's going to end badly. I mean, it has to end badly. Like anyone who just has these aggressive expansionist aims, not paying any attention to anyone else's security concern, is going to end badly. I mean, it's we're going to say with scientific accuracy that it's sooner or later, maybe it'll be sooner, maybe later, but it's going to end in calamity.
For just about everybody.
Right.
Okay. It's a God that has to fail for these people, and up until that point, we live in very, very dangerous times, and George and I reiterate that all of the time. We do make light of people, numbskulls like Stoltenberg and Lavelle, because they're really they're such a great they're the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact we're in perilous times.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. They're the equivalent of sort of AOCs. They're a good laugh, but behind them stands real power. Just like AOC, she entertains us, but behind her stands real power. She's just there, the front person, the cutie, who is the front person, but there's serious power behind her.
Well, Stoltenberg, he's going to be head of the Norwegian bank or something like that?
Yes, that's a big job.
Yeah, gonna fail upwards, dude, like everybody else, okay? It's kind of, it's the Tony Blair school of incompetence, okay? Just keep falling upward and
lining up exactly big.
And then he'll be a consultant. What was it, Rasmussen? He reared his ugly head a few weeks ago. Special advisor to Ukraine.
That's right, exactly. Yeah,
how much do you be paid for that? How many people are paying you? How many different boards and all that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Rasmussen, who was here, not here. He was in the United States lobbying. He was lobbying the American politicians for ponying up more money for Ukraine. So that he's now apparently an international bureaucrat, having done his bit. he's cashing in by acting as a lobbyist. Not quite sure who was funding him, but a lot of money was going behind this, hectoring American politicians to do more.
Like Deep Throat said,
Yeah.
follow
the money. Exactly.
All right, everybody, this is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Visit the store, and the boys are telling me, all three of them, that George has a live cast this time tomorrow.
Exactly. Live stream tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please join me. Come with criticisms, comments, suggestions, excellent questions. They always are. And on the way out the door to the local watering home, think about little Buddy. Because Buddy says, well, if Rasmussen can make a lot of money, how come there's nothing in the tip jar? I mean, that's his logic. I don't know what the answer is to that question, but he's making, you know, an important issue. The tip jar just isn't full enough. So you know, if you've got a few bob in your pocket, whip him out, dunk him in his tip jar. That'll keep him happy. We're very grateful for all of your help and friendship and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, the more we can stop this comparison with wealthy, powerful people. I mean, I think it's become an obsession with Buddy. So remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.